What's going on, everyone? You're listening to the My Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller from The Eagle, joined by Travis Brown. This, of course, sponsored by the brand Harley-Davidson in College Station. Travis, looking at A&M football, there's some big questions this week about, one, the Aggies offense, and two, where they might be headed at quarterback coming off a pretty lackluster loss to Appalachian State last week, 17-14. We talked a little bit about it on Monday after Jimbo's press conference. Now that there's been a couple days to, look back at what happened, hear from him this morning on the SEC teleconference, what's kind of the feeling about where A&M's at on offense heading into a pretty pivotal game at home Saturday night against Miami?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of in the same spot at where it is, and that is that Jimbo Fisher has got to adapt, whether that's this season, whether that's in the quarterback, whether that's changing up the way he calls the game, or whether that is changing up who calls the game. And I don't necessarily see him as a guy who would do that mid-season, of course. So I think that falls onto kind of the way he calls the game, or maybe who is the quarterback who's calling those shots. We asked him at the on the SEC teleconference today if Max Johnson was getting any more reps with the ones than he had been previously, and he declined the answer. He just said, "We're repping everybody," and so it'll be interesting to see how that necessarily shakes out come this weekend, but he's got to find a way that if the ball possession game that he is used to running, where you hold the ball, get first downs, keep the other team's offense on the field and score as many points as you need, if that's not working, if they can't possess the ball, how are they going to get some points on the board if the game turns into a shootout, or if they just can't maintain a long drive, whether that be chunk passing plays? They only attempted, I believe it was 2 passing plays beyond 20 yards in that game. Granted, they only had 38 total plays, so everything was shrunk down. But as you see that the run game isn't necessarily stepping up, and that the taking penalties, the short kind of bubble screen game isn't going anywhere, you might have to take some shots, and they only took 2 in that last game. So I do think that there has to be some adaptation when it comes to the game, depending on what the other team is doing, what the other team is giving you. And I don't see that coming. It'll be interesting to see if not only if execution isn't necessarily there, then you have to take some risks and see if some of those risks will be taken in the future.
I don't think many had A&M losing to App State last weekend, and if at all. But A&M's really at a crossroads right now, because when you look at what the next month has in store for the Aggies, home against Miami, at a neutral site against Arkansas, who's up in the top 15, might be in the top 10 even, at Mississippi State, a place where A&M's traditionally had a hard time. And then, of course, at Alabama, the one everybody's had circled for the whole offseason, and certainly the Crimson Tide have for sure, whether they want to admit it or not. A&M's really at a crossroads. How pivotal is it for A&M to get it going on offense, knowing that the season's going to probably be defined within this next month?
This will be the hardest test that Miami has faced so far with, I believe it was Georgia Southern and Bethune-Cookman.
Bethune-Cookman and... I can't remember the other one.
Yeah, I believe it was maybe Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern beat Nebraska last week.
Right, but in their first week.
It was Southern Miss.
Southern Miss. I knew there was a Southern in there. And so this will be the best test that they have seen, at least on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe that they can catch them sleeping a little bit. I think this is... all the rest of the games for the rest of the season are basically must-wins now after you lose to App State, if you want to have the season that you want to have. But this is a must-win for the next group, because you only really have one loss to play with if you want to still kind of achieve the goals that you have. And you're thinking you're going to pencil that in for Alabama, even though that Arkansas game is looking tougher and tougher every week that goes by. They're leading the SEC in both passing and rushing yards, and have a dominant, really physical fronts on both the offensive and defensive side of the balls, which is a whole nother thing. But yeah, this is a must-win game for the Aggies if they want to try to salvage this season, because I think there is an opportunity to catch a team who hasn't necessarily faced any kind of tough opponent. And people say, well, A&M hasn't either. App State's pretty good. They absolutely dominate A&M on both sides of the ball, and I think they're going to win a lot of games. They're probably going to win the Sun Belt this year, which that's a whole nother race to talk about as well. All that being said, it's a very, very important game, and it'll be important for whoever is at quarterback to step up and make a mark.
I think Jimbo and the players have made it clear it's not all on the quarterback. And when you look at A&M's offensive struggles, we've talked about the offensive line. We've noted how receivers have had a couple miscues here and there on running routes at correct depths and widths and whatnot. What are you looking for aside from A&M's signal caller on Saturday to see the offensive unit be maybe a little more cohesive?
Well, I'm just looking to see if, and it's not necessarily something that we can see from the press box, but to kind of get an idea that some of the reads and some of the way that the plays are run have been simplified a little bit, because either you have Haynes Keene back there who is already struggling to make his way through the offense and move the offense, or you're going to have Max Johnson, who's only had a spring ball in this offense. And from people I've talked to, it takes several semesters to get to the point where where you're having to look on every play and where the progressions start, because it's if the cornerback is playing this way and the linebacker is playing this way, the progression starts here. But if they're not, then the progression starts here, and to know exactly where you're looking, because if you're guessing, it's done. You have to know, and it's just this intensive study where you have to be of the same brain as Jimbo Fisher, and he is an offensive genius. The way he set up this offense is really, really smart, but it involves someone who is of that same mindset as him, and I just needs to be simplified a little bit. They have the talent out there from all these recruiting classes they brought in the last 3 years or so to be a really good football team. Their scheme just isn't matching up with first and second year players, because that's what they basically have out there in most positions. I just want to see if the offense is a little bit scaled down, if it seems like the progressions and everything are flowing pretty easily for the quarterbacks. You got to look at the offensive line and make sure that they're giving him enough time to make the reads through those progressions. And you want to see that if ball possession isn't working, if they're not being able to maintain long drives, if he's willing to take some shots and try to get some of those explosive plays to try to get some points on the board when things aren't necessarily working. Try to throw on first down, throw in early down possessions when they typically like to run or throw it underneath. Do that, because with the run game not doing anything really, it kind of takes out the play action pass game. And usually Jimbo Fisher likes to take shots off the play action pass game. So you're just going to have to maybe go 5 wide and take the tight end out and just make it a little bit simpler for everybody. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that A&M's got to find some semblance of a run game. That's important. They probably need to find a second running back to really complement Devon A-Chain. That's been something they haven't been able to do so far. I'm really curious what adding Bryce Foster does to the mix potentially. What does A&M's offensive line look like? Does Bryce Foster get the nod over Matthew Wyckoff at center? Haynes King's, I mean, you look at some of the plays last week, some of those bobbled snaps and difficult handoffs. I mean, part of that's because he didn't get the snap to him very well. And so, the offensive line's got to shore it up. I mean, not to be a coach cliche, but they say it, and I think it's true. It starts in the trenches, and A&M's really got to get that front 5 figured out. And, when you've got guys like Evan Stewart and Ananias Smith, I mean, you've got A&M's got to find ways to get the ball in their hands and get them open in space, get them play in the passing game at the backfield. I don't know.
The thing that we talked about the most this offseason, well, maybe not the most, but a lot, is the fact that this A&M team seemed to have more depth at more positions than just about any other time that Jimbo Fisher has been here. Look at tight end, look at wide receiver, look at offensive line. It seemed like the battles were there, and the players and the coaches were saying that the depth was there to really push competition. Well, when things have been struggling and we haven't really seen the willingness to try other options. And so either the depth isn't there like they have said that there was, or there's a stubbornness to go out there and try something new. And it'll be interesting to see how maybe that gets shaken up this week. We looked at a little bit of the A&M side because that's the offense is what everyone was going to be looking at. Let's look at the Miami side of things coming up next.